When watching arguably the most deliciously violent sport in modern existence, it may come as a surprise to know that there are certain acts and decisions that are seen as unsavory inside of the Octagon. In fact, some incidents are so heinous that the perpetrator in question quickly finds themselves on the infamous UFC blacklist, sometimes without even stepping inside of the cage. Some of these former UFC employees' crimes were obviously worse than others, but they all ended up being outcasted from Dana White's empire for life because of them. I'm Gareth from What Culture Combat, and these are 10 fighters who were banished from UFC. Number 10. Paul Daley. When you've been given an outlet to beat the holy hell out of each other for 3 to 5 rounds, it takes an absolute douche to take a shot at an opponent after a bout is concluded. Yeah, that's exactly what English kickboxer Paul Daley chose to do after he'd gone 3 rounds with UFC's resident loudmouth Josh Koscheck in a welterweight #1 contendership fight at UFC 113. Koscheck dominated every round, and this obviously got to Daley, who landed a shocking left hook on his rival after the final bell had sounded. The ref had to pin Daley to the side of the cage, but the damage had already been done to his UFC career. A pissed off Dana White sentenced the end of Daley's career in the company by decreeing that he would never fight in the UFC ever again. True to White's word, Daley hasn't been seen inside the UFC since, and it's hard to argue with such a cowardly act being reacted to in this way. Number 9. Mikkel Graves. Mikkel Graves started his MMA career by going unbeaten in various promotions across Florida, before eventually trying out to be a competitor on The Ultimate Fighter 21. Graves had a decent showing in the competition and would defeat Vicente Luque by unanimous decision on the show's finale, earning a UFC deal in the process. However, his promising UFC career will come to a screeching halt when news broke of Graves being arrested on a misdemeanor battery charge, and his contract would be permanently terminated shortly after. The fact that Graves apparently punched and elbowed his fiancée in the face more than justifies Dana White's decision to get rid of this despicable character. Number 8. Mikkel Falcao. Coming into UFC with a 25-3 record, it was plain to see that Mikkel Falcao had all the ingredients required to be a hit inside of the Octagon. Proving this theory to be true, Falcao won his inaugural bout under the promotion's banner by decision at UFC 123, beating Gerald Harris. But his joy was short-lived. Falcao will be arrested in his native Brazil just days later for his part in assaulting a woman outside a nightclub way back in 2002. After pulling out of his next fight due to injury, Falcao looked set to take on Tom Lawler at UFC 134. As it turned out, the bout would never actually come to pass, and the Brazilian would suddenly be released from the company. The move apparently coming after fans on social media demanded he be taken off the card. Dana White eventually commented on the release in 2013 and stated that sexual assault, hitting a woman, or anything like that, you're gone from the roster. Simple as that, really. Number 7. Jason High. If you want to talk about things you definitely cannot be caught doing inside of a professional fighting arena, putting your hands on a referee is pretty much a no-brainer, right? Yeah, someone should have reminded the Kansas City Bandit Jason High about that irredeemable crime coming into his lightweight bout with Rafael Dos Anjos at UFC Fight Night 42. He simply couldn't get the job done and lost the fight via TKO in the second round. Feeling outraged at the ref's decision to stop the bout, a visibly distraught High shoved referee Kevin Mulhall. Immediately after the fight, Dana White didn't hesitate in announcing he was cut, and went as far as to aggressively remind High that you don't ever f***ing touch a referee. Ever. Number 6. Diego Brandao. Bet you didn't expect to see an episode involving a UFC fighter pistol whipping a man outside an Albuquerque strip club on this list, did you? Yet here we are. Diego Brandao had the world at his feet, coming off the back of his success on The Ultimate Fighter, but followed up his finale victory over Dennis Bermudez with a loss against Darren Elkins at UFC 146. This up and down UFC career would eventually come to a spluttering end in April 2016, when Brandao was charged with 4 felonies. One of these involved assault with great bodily harm, with his other 3 attacks coming whilst handling a deadly weapon. This entire altercation came off the back of Brandao being asked to leave a strip club after having a disagreement with the DJ. We've all been there, buddy. No, we've not. Wait, what? Inevitably, he was released from the company a few weeks after said incident. Number 5. Wanderlei Silva. The axe murderer Wanderlei Silva laid waste to countless opponents in Pride before returning to the American stage in August 2007, re-signing for UFC. Unfortunately, Silva would go on a disappointing run and lost to Chuck Liddell, Quinton Rampage Jackson, Chris Leben, and Rich Franklin twice. in his last tenure with the company. But it was after his stint as a coach on The Ultimate Fighter opposite the bad guy Chael Sonnen that things started to really unravel for Silva. Originally slated to face his rival coach at UFC 175 in 2014, the fight was called off after Sonnen failed a random drug test and Silva outright refused to comply with one altogether. This refusal led to a lifetime ban and a $70,000 fine. Silva had the ban overturned in 2015 before eventually being released by the UFC. The circumstances surrounding his exit, especially with the promotion now cracking down so heavily on doping, ensure that Silva won't get the chance to call UFC home anytime soon. Number 4. Cody East. Cody East didn't do much of note inside UFC, going 0-2 in the promotion. The company were blasted for even signing him in the first place, with the fighter having been sentenced to 3 years in prison on child abuse charges in 2008. He would finally be released following his abysmal showings in the Octagon, but it was his actions after leaving that made sure he would never be seen in UFC again. In January 2017, it came to light that East had apparently kneed his girlfriend in the head and threatened to kill her 10-year-old son. Physically bullying your other half is one thing, but to combine that with the intention of ending her child's life if she didn't cooperate was enough to warrant a lifetime ban from MMA at the very least. As of 2019, he's yet to be given such a suspension, but don't expect to see him reappear at a UFC event before he retires. Number 3. War Machine. You just knew that anyone who had the goal to legally change their name to War Machine was bound to be bad news, and true to form, the former Jonathan Paul Koppenhaver proved to be a seriously wretched specimen. Taking part in the Ultimate Fighter Team Hughes versus Team Serra, Koppenhaver was brought in as a last-minute replacement for the injured Roman Mitichian on the latter team. He would KO Jared Rollins in his official debut for UFC in the finale of the series, yet would only go on to fight once more for the company in a losing effort against Yoshiyuki Yoshida at UFC 84. He was released shortly after due to not accepting a matchup offered to him by UFC matchmaker Joe Silva. It was a blessing in disguise. War Machine would go on to be charged with assault on multiple occasions before his most brutal crime took place in 2014. Following this, a woman named Christy Mack was the victim of a vicious assault by War Machine, which resulted in 18 of her bones being broken. She ended up with a broken nose, fractured ribs, and a ruptured liver. In March 2017, War Machine was sentenced to life in prison after being convicted of 29 felonies, which included kidnapping and sexual assault with a weapon. Such a disgusting act of violence deserves this level of severity, and UFC have rightfully distanced themselves from this barbaric human being. Number 2. Thiago Silva. Thiago Silva made a bit of a habit out of breaking the rules during his time with the UFC. Between altering his urine samples and testing positive for marijuana, it was plain to see that a happy ending in the company would never be on the cards for Silva. That being said, the incident that led to his eventual release from the promotion made those other discrepancies look like child's play. The first offense in question would see Silva threaten his ex-wife Taysa by putting a gun in her mouth. Apparently, Silva wasn't happy with gym owner Pablo Popovic's relationship with his ex-wife, who happened to be training with the owner at his establishment. Silva would then turn up at the same gym a week later and threaten to kill Popovic and Taysa with a Glock before speeding off in a vehicle. The former UFC employee would later be charged with aggravated battery. This provoked Dana White into releasing the fighter and claiming that Silva would never fight in the UFC again, before sensationally re-signing him after all criminal charges were dropped in September of the same year. The plot thickens. That return didn't last long, and Silva was quickly given the boot again, with the UFC citing new video/audio evidence from the infamous altercation being received a few weeks after the Brazilian signed his second contract with the company. I'm glad that's over. Number 1. BJ Penn. Let's end this list with the most recent banishment from Dana White's house of ass-kicking. BJ Penn has done everything there is to do inside the world of MMA. With a truly stellar resume coupled with a place in the UFC Hall of Fame, Penn looked as though he had a job for life in the promotion. Yet a brawl in Pahoa, Hawaii earlier this year altered his destiny with the company forever. In what felt like less of a punishment and more of an act of compassion, Dana White would release Penn from his contract after witnessing a video of the former champ scrapping. This coming after he was involved in yet another street fight earlier in the year. White stated that Penn won't fight again in the UFC and that he needed to focus on his personal life and get himself together before he thinks about fighting again. It doesn't look as though he will ever get the chance to put himself in harm's way inside of the Octagon again. But the most important thing is for Penn to get the help he quite clearly needs. And that is our list. Know of any other fighters who were banished from the UFC? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I've been Gareth from What Culture Combat, and I'm sure I'm going to see you soon. See you later.